Thank you, Pooja. It's great to be here. I'm sure all of you having a fantastic time. Um, the conversations have been around the resilience of the SME sector and what is it to reimagine the future. Uh, I think it's time to move on from talking about business for business to business for good or business for a purpose. I think with KK here with me, I would really want to understand what he thinks about what is business for a purpose. But before we start, I must say that I've had a few conversations with KK, and every conversation I come out with newer ideas and clarity. Uh, KK, one of the major questions that I want to ask you is that, while in today's time when founders of companies would do anything to hang on to their ESOPs, you sold off yours and put the money to support philanthropic causes. You are an inspiration for leaders who want to do something for the society. I want to understand what convinced you to take this step.
Thank you, Nidhi. It's great to be on this session. And I do think that SMEs in the IT sector are really going to be the future of this industry. So it's really a pleasure for me to interact with them. I think you raised the question of purpose. And purpose becomes very important, not just for the large companies, but also for the small and medium enterprises. Again, in my context, when we started Mindtree, we started with the purpose of wanting to be an admired and memorable company. And in that context, had a values which we defined as CLASS, which stood for caring, learning, achieving, sharing, and being socially responsive. So large part of wanting to give back to the society in a way was driven by the values which really got accepted by the whole team which was there as a part of Mindtree, which was probably 100, 150 people. And that in turn started driving us in terms of saying, how is it we can contribute back to the society? The second key driver was, honestly, all of us who co-founded Mindtree, we did not come with a silver spoon. We came in from middle-class families, and we'd been at the right time, right place, and to that extent became successful. So we said it's important that we set the path in giving back to society. And while at Mindtree, we did a number of things, particularly getting associated with the cause of children with cerebral palsy, and how do we really make their lives normal through both technology interventions as well as giving them support. As well as one of the other major initiatives we took was the cause of what we call waste management professionals, which we tend to call them as rag pickers. How do we improve their lives and make them earn more? So philanthropy in a way is driven by purpose. In fact, the way I see it is philanthropy and charity are very different. Charity is something where you donate something without thinking, because you just feel at that moment that you need to give some support. But philanthropy is something where you need to have a purpose. You need to think through what are the causes and issues that you're going to support, and then work on it in a very structured way. And I must sort of add here that it's not that philanthropy is only for people who have resources to do that. I think everybody can do it in its own way. You may not have access to a lot of resources, but even dedicating your time to improve something in a structured way is philanthropy.
Wonderful, KK. I think always very inspiring. And since you mentioned that, there is a difference between philanthropy and giving back in terms of with a purpose. My next question to you would be that, since there's a difference between the two as a society, where do you see us head? Has the time come for the idea of business for good across business segments, or is it only limited to certain size of the companies? Or you feel that you mentioned that anybody can actually start that, but what do you feel about that?
No, I think the stage has come where today business for good is very essential for companies, whether they are small or big. Yeah. In fact, one of the persons who really admired in this area is the earlier CEO of Paul Polman of Unilever. And I had the great opportunity to interact with Paul on this topic many times. Paul really was, I would say, a trendsetter in this space. And for those who are listening into this, I would certainly recommend reading his book called Net Positive, because he was very concerned about social impact and how do we leave the environment a better place for our future. And to that extent, a lot of strategic initiatives of Unilever were built around saying that how would you be a better company by reducing your environmental waste. And Paul announced a very ambitious target when he took over, saying the next 5 years, Unilever in its packaging will reduce 50% of what they contribute in terms of waste, which is a very bold and ambitious statement to make, because it did have business implications. While that example is about Unilever, I think you can see many examples of people who have been small enterprises who also done that. One example which comes to my mind is a for-profit enterprise in Bangalore called Hasiru Dalla, which really works with people who collect waste. Their whole vision is to reduce the landfills, which are being today caused because of ineffective waste management practices. So they work with grassroots level waste pickers, have evolved very good processes and technology systems to reduce landfill. And again, they are not a large company. They're probably a company with 40, 50 people, turnover wise might be just a few crores. But still, since they're driven by a purpose and a vision to reduce reduction in landfill, I think they've created a great example of what even small enterprises can do. What I would also leave as a thought with many of the SMEs here today is that I think the world is changing. Today, I think a lot is talked about what is called ESG investing, where companies are far more sensitive about their environmental sustainability guidelines and publish information about that. And to that extent, investors invest in companies which are demonstrating a very credible action on that. And what I've seen in Mindtree is when we demonstrate action, you not only get better investors, you get better customers. In fact, I can tell you, we gain many customers because customers were very appreciative of the efforts which you're putting on ESG. So the world tomorrow is different. I think it's concerned about what are businesses doing rather than just making profits. What are they doing to keep the world more sustainable? And I would say you'll get better customers, better investors, better employees if you adopt very significantly thought through ESG initiatives.
So KK, you spoke about better customers, and in the end, you also spoke about better employees. And the way things are, and we are saying about attracting talent, the right kind of talent. How do you see, can you just elaborate a little bit more on that? That how do you see that if a business looks at things from a social impact point of view, from a purpose point of view, how it really help them to attract and retain talent? Because it's not only about shareholders or customers, it's also a lot about the talent, the right employees.
No, I think it's important organizations start thinking about the 3 Ps, people, planet, and profits, really in that order. And you rightly raised the question of people. I think there are 2 dimensions to it. One, I think the future generations of workforce are far more concerned about the environment and the impact their businesses are having on the environment. And that is becoming very evident. In fact, I would, and at Mindtree, we used to recruit a lot of campus recruits from engineering colleges. And I have noticed it for the last 10 years. The nature of questions people raise in terms of what is it that the company is doing to make the world more sustainable was a very common question. So in really attracting smart and very intelligent future talent, unless the company is demonstrably showing results on being sustainable, I think you will not be able to attract that talent. So it is a business imperative to attract good people. You need to have a very well demonstrated track record on sustainability. Yeah. The other key factor is, I think, the workforce of tomorrow is not going to be just employees. You're going to have the gig workers or people who are experts in some area who will just come and work with the company for some time based on their capability and skill, and then they move on to the next job. Even attracting gig workers, I think it's important that you're known to be a company which is demonstrating definite focus on ESG practices. And the better ones among the gig workers will choose companies which have a proven track record on that. So I think in the context of attracting and retaining workforce, what the company is able to demonstrate in terms of its focus on leaving the world a better place is very important. And this is true whether you're a large company or a small company.
Absolutely true, KK. In fact, I came across a report by Deloitte where the millennials were asked that what is the reason that you will join a particular corporate, and a lot of them actually spoke about improving society. If a corporate is working for improving society compared to generating profit, I think a lot of the younger generation is getting attracted to that because of their awareness levels. So definitely, yes, I agree with you out there that investing in purpose for purpose is definitely a big way to at least attract the younger talent out here and retaining them. We all know that the last 2 years have been very, very difficult for the SME sector, especially because of the pandemic. And while it is resilient, they're resurging and reimagining business as the economy improves. The pandemic has been an inflection point in many ways as old business models give away to the new ones. What would be your advice to the sector to create inclusive and impact-driven business models?
See, I think in our business, what is the pandemic has demonstrated is that technology is no more just an enabler. It is the business itself. So I think for the next 5 years, this understanding is going to drive a lot more enterprises to see how they can leverage technology in their business and even use technology to do social good. Which is where I think I'm very excited about the possibility of small and medium enterprises becoming far more relevant, because that the customers feel technology is imperative is given with the impact of pandemic. Yeah. But what has also changed is the client's ability to take risks. They no more just want to work with the larger players. If there is a small and medium-sized player which understands an area of technology well and is able to collaborate with them to deliver results for them, they won't mind experimenting. So it's very important that small and medium enterprises leverage this tailwind of technology adoption by enterprises. Go to enterprises with a very specific value proposition. It's important to say your story of how you'll add value in a far more impactful manner, and ensure that you build a team which is built on purpose, which is aligned to a purpose, so that they are passionate about delivering the message or the promise which are made to the customer. I think that's the way the businesses can be built. And I think in the evolving landscape, size is no more a differentiator. Everybody competes on capability and your customer sensitivity and empathy. So as long as small and medium enterprises build significant customer empathy and capability, they are equally capable of competing with companies which might be much larger than them.
So, KK, if size is not a differentiator, purpose is definitely a differentiator. So, how would what would be your, advice as what should be the first step for the SMEs to achieve this balance?
See, I think since SMBs mainly tend to be founder-driven or owner-driven, it's important that the messaging starts from the top. fact, I have known of a small and medium sized company which really wanted to ensure that they encourage women entrepreneurs, particularly in rural areas. So they took upon themselves to say what is it that they need, and right from the top, they started doing that. Here again, I'll give the example of Mindtree because we are not amongst the larger companies. When we saw that the younger generation was far more sensitive to society and wanted to do good, as a part of our performance appraisal process, rather than the 6 objectives, we said you'll have only 5 objectives. The 6th objective will be what is your individual social responsibility. Yeah. It could be that one person says, hey, in the slum near me, I'm going to teach these kids English. It could be anything, and the company will support you to do that. So it's important to say that, one, it has to be leadership driven. You need to set the tone for, in a visible way, demonstrating that the company is committed to a purpose and will do what is required, and also provide the flexibility to the larger group within the organization to do what is of interest to them, and the organization should support in whatever manner they can do. So you are giving individual flexibility, at the same time really articulating the purpose in a simple, impactful manner so that people feel committed and aligned to that purpose.
So definitely founder driven, definitely has to come from the top. Their ownership has to be from the CEO or the founders. And involvement of the employees, definitely, yes. I think instead of forced responsibility, if everybody can take their own individual responsibility and having them involved in the purpose, I think, yes, definitely these are brilliant inputs. KK, you did give examples of HUL and a couple of other examples, but there have been many cases where the model of a company could have been very unsustainable, but when they have integrated social impact into it, it has become sustainable. This kind of creates a snowball of action that leads to impactful social change. Can you give us some of your favorite examples out here where you've seen this change firsthand?
No, certainly. In fact, I probably wouldn't be able to name the company, but again, it's a small company, which is really in what you call the circular economy. Yeah. What they mean by that is while large cities and even tier 1, tier 2 cities see waste as a headache to deal with, this company started looking at saying, how can we convert it to a business opportunity? So they built technology around converting urban waste through technology to both converting it into potential ingredients for plants, as well as generating gas out of it, which is more gas which is non-polluting, and continue to sort of be sensitive to the environment, as well as trying to ensure that none of the waste really gets into landfill, which corrupts the local environment in a much more, I would say, impactful way. Yeah. Initially, when they saw it more as a social equation, they were always going to corporate saying, hey, we have this project, we can do it at this location, so fund us for that. They used to get a mixed set of results, which is when they really decided to change the business model of saying, hey, if we are generating economic output of gas and something which can be used in horticulture, why don't we convert it as a business? That's when I think the entire dynamics changed. And today, yes, there are small, successful business enterprise which generates revenue based on the gas and horticultural inputs which they make, and they're sustainable on their own now. So there are enough of role models. Again, this is just one which I sort of came to my mind. But there are enough of role models where companies have really moved into what I call both social philanthropy or charity-driven efforts, coupled with what you call as not for loss, which means you're generating profit, which helps sort of sustain the social costs initiative also. And they've been very successful.
So definitely we don't need to look at a social cost or a social good from only non-profit point of view. There is a need to
Yes.
see it for for-profit point of view. I think that's how it will become sustainable, definitely. KK, it's all good to talk about social purpose and value creation, but I'm sure a lot of them, people on the audience will actually say, how do we make sure that this is quantifiable? How do we make sure that it is sustainable? There has been some research which says that a lot of companies do see value in it, but unfortunately, most of them are top 5% companies. Here on the call, we have many founders and senior professionals from the SME sector. What is the advice and the guidance you'll want to give them on this business for good?
No, I think it's important. And today, like you rightly said, the top 5% of the companies are focusing a lot more on it. And there are templates available by which you can measure. And I know at Mindtree, starting from 2015, we started publishing what we call our sustainability performance. And it used to go to all stakeholders saying that what is it we have done in the area of sustainability, and a lot of well-run companies do that. And today, there are guidelines around sustainability report itself, and many of the big five audit it and certify it. And again, to be honest, I think it's also becoming a potential possibility for revenue, because if you're doing sustainability and if you get carbon credits, there is a market available where you can sell the credits, and it practically, in a way, pays for some of the sustainability initiatives that you make. So for the larger companies, there is a framework which is evolving, and certainly they have an opportunity to adopt that framework. For the smaller companies, I think it's important to articulate what is the purpose or what is the change which you want to drive at. It could be simple things like saying, you know what, in the city in which I am, I would like children below the poverty line to start being able to read English books. I'm just off the cuff giving an example. It could be as simple as that. And they could just measure the progress with respect to that, because they support interventions which make those kids do that. And then they could report saying that, you know what, this year we trained 200 kids below the poverty line to be able to read English books on their own. Because see, at the end of the day, social change cannot be done overnight. It is a step-by-step change, which is why many times I keep telling people, in the social context, you cannot directly apply your corporate ideas. Yes, a couple of ideas and approaches are, you can implement them, but in the social context, you need to adopt a different approach. Adopting scale in social enterprises is a step-by-step approach. So as many companies start doing this, I think all these little droplets will start working together, and then you'll suddenly find you've created a lake. I think that's how social change will become more sustainable.
So every drop is important, definitely. We are talking about India becoming a $5 trillion economy. To achieve that, we need to make sure that some basics are right out here, such as digital literacy across board. NASSCOM Foundation, NASSCOM Foundation has also taken up a target of, skilling over 25 billion people in the next 5 years. Any such change would require many stakeholders to come together. What is the role that you think SME sector can play in this whole change process?
No, what you talked about is very important, that obviously the pandemic has accelerated that, but it's very clear that the future is all about everybody in the society being able to use technology tools, which is why this initiative of NASSCOM Foundation to train 25 million people, teach them digital skills is so important, because technology cannot be in isolation unless people can adopt and use them. The real benefit happens when people are able to assimilate and use the technology, and for which training them on that is very key. What I would certainly encourage small and medium enterprises is that I think each one can do their little bit on this initiative. And it's not just the responsibility of the larger companies just to do this. I think everybody, you could say that, hey, in the location in which I am, I would like to get engaged in training probably a few hundred people on digital skills and leverage the NASSCOM Foundation platform to do that. So it's important that when you realize that something is important in the context of driving through a difficult change, how can you contribute to it in your own small way is what I would certainly encourage SMBs to think about.
Yeah, thanks, KK. KK, I think my last question out here would be that, you have covered a lot of that, but, if in the end you have to put it together that, many leaders will struggle to make the business case for doing good, especially in the SME sector. So what do you recommend for them specifically? Should their approach be a little different from the rest, or it has to be a similar approach?
See, many times when we are talking of doing good, I think inherently our mind sort of wanders around to resources around it. And being empathetic in terms of small and medium enterprises, when I personally work with them a lot, it is difficult at your stage to deploy any meaningful resources into it, which could be money or material. But what I do believe is you can do things within your control, which is really your time and your intellectual capability of solving some complex problems, which in turn would bring good. So even if you're not able to allocate resources, that does not mean you cannot allocate some part of your personal time, some part of your intellectual bandwidth to help solve these problems. And that could be your contribution really in the context of leveraging either technology or initiatives to do good for society. So do it in your own way. There's nothing wrong. Resources only need not be the way in which you do good. You can also do it with your just personal time, energy, and intellect.
Thanks, KK. I think if just to sum it all, I think, yes, it is founder driven. It has to come from the top. There has to be an ownership out here. One has to look at it from a point of view of actually making your business sustainable. It may look at an initial resource cost for you, but in the end, in the long term, it makes your business sustainable, attracts more talent, attracts more resources. So definitely, I think just like any other time, having a conversation with you out here, I'm going back with a lot of brilliant ideas, more thoughts, and I'm hoping that the SME sector would say, okay, let's start small, but let's make it business for good. Thank you, KK. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Nidhi. Pleasure to be on this show. Thank you.